something to say, something to say.
Ooh.
Hey everybody, how's it going? This is OurHouse21, and this time I'm jumping in a little bit out of sequence to give a little bit of background before I hit a big event this weekend. So if you've been following my channel and social media, you'll see that I've been making a big push to get videos out documenting my process for getting my Christmas present, my e-flite Convergence VTOL aircraft ready for its first flight. So I'm going to spoil it a little bit and say that that first flight actually has already happened and happened a few days ago. So I'm just stopping and just giving a quick rundown of everything that I had to do to this bird in order to make it ready for that first flight, and the things that I'm doing to get it ready for the path I'm trying to take it on. So first off, I talked about this a little bit in my last video, the flight prep and Venom unboxing video. Click a card, you'll see it right there. But this guy right here is the plug-and-play version of the aircraft, which was not really intended to fly with a non-horizon battery pack and with a flight controller that is different than the Spectrum satellite controllers. So I ended up having to chop up the airframe right out of the box in order to make it work, to fit everything in it. It wasn't a big deal, but I just wanted to show you guys what I actually had to do. So just in case any of you guys are wanting to run a larger than standard battery. So, and when I'm talking about like this right here, this is what I ran. You guys saw this in the last video. This Venom 3200 milliamp hour 30C 3S battery pack. So inside the compartment here, you can see, let's pop this guy up, that I have to open it up a little bit on each side. So now this battery just fits right down the side of here. And it's actually a nice, good, snug fit. So that works really well. And I've got the Venom uni connector connected up to the stock EC3, so I can just plug this guy up. So it ends up, because this is a little bit long, it still slides down inside the compartment and it fits okay, but there's not a whole lot of room for me to adjust the battery pack. So it's pretty much all in the full forward position. But it seems to be, it seems to fly pretty well with that position. There's an old expression in aircraft: a nose-heavy aircraft flies poorly, a tail-heavy aircraft flies once. So it doesn't really bother me too much if the nose is a little bit heavy, because that actually is manageable from flight characteristics. So I'm still trying to figure everything out. I may end up having to go and cut this the EC3 connector off and just put in an XT60 so that I can get this down to the tunnel a little bit more, so that I can have a couple extra millimeters to adjust the battery pack around, but that's okay. So the other thing you'll notice down here is this little black section there. That's actually the underbelly of my receiver. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the aircraft over. And you see the little nacelle for the payload bay comes right off. And with that, you can see the e-flite flight controller in here. And right here is my Flysky 6-channel receiver. And you'll notice that, look at that at an angle, I actually have to take my Dremel tool and I made a outline and just basically pretended I was a CNC router and just cleared out all the material in this bay up until the two foam sidebars that basically provide the strength for this rail here, and just pulled all that material out in order to be able to drop this receiver down inside of here. And there's just enough room between the balsa panel for the flight controller and this little square section, which is part of the reinforcement, or where this little nacelle connects to, where everything worked out. Now at some point I might want to go to a 10-channel receiver for this aircraft, but that's not really going to work with this little compartment here. So if I decide to go that route, I might have to chop a little bit further, but I suspect I'm going to be able to do everything that I need to do with the 6-channel and I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. But basically, this was a little bit stressful because I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to make this work and fit snugly. Fortunately, it did. But the other aspect of it is the antennas, because this Flysky has really long antennas. The actual active area of the antenna is not that big, but the way that they mount these things, you've got these massive assemblies, which I guess are low noise coupling devices to basically increase the efficiency of these antennas. I have to admit, Flysky did a lot of engineering for a cheap radio. But these are basically fully capable diversity-enabled receivers. They're full diversity-enabled receivers, which means that they have two independent receiver channels, and it picks the one that has the best signal in order to get good signal to noise and manage the data link. For a $50 radio with effectively $10 receivers, that's pretty freaking awesome engineering. So I got to give it up where, you got to give credit where credit is due. So they did a bang up job with these things, just from a pure design and engineering standpoint. I'm an engineering geek, so I appreciate stuff like that. So, and just, you might ask, why do I have these oriented in this direction? RC antennas, or at least the standard ones that you see on most types of airplanes and car-based radios, are called dipole antennas. And what that means is that they just have, or some people call them whip antennas, but effectively they just have a wire that's in here. And that wire radiates in 360 degrees around this pole. So dipole means two poles. So it has a positive and negative end, and it just radiates outwards like a big donut. So all antennas have what they call an antenna pattern, which is the three-dimensional plot of where they're sensitive. So for a dipole antenna, it's an omnidirectional antenna, which means that it receives signals from all directions, except where you start to line up with the pole directions, it has a hole. So if you look at what this antenna pattern actually looks like, it looks like a big donut, but it has a hole in the middle that's lined up with this big axis. If you're an aircraft and you have to mount your antenna sideways, what happens is there's going to be some directions where you're going to be lining up with the null in that antenna pattern. That means the spot that you don't have any effective perception. So if you just happen to get your plane in the right geometry where it doesn't line up with the good part of the antenna pattern, you get no signal. You can lose control of the aircraft. Bad things can happen. So if you're a car or a boat, you just put the antenna pointing straight up and down, and chances are you're not going to be hovering above your aircraft or your boat, so you're not going to have any problems. But if you have an aircraft which is moving around in 3 dimensions, yeah, that's a big deal. So you'll see a lot of aircraft receivers actually have 2 antennas, and some people just put the antennas side by side next to each other and call it a day, but they're missing out on the good part of what these things do. So by putting the dipoles lining up in 2 different directions, they're like 90 degrees from each other, and it really doesn't matter which 90-degree angle you get to. But as long as they're mounted so that they're orthogonal or 90 degrees from each other, what happens is the donut hole for this one lines up with this axis of the aircraft, and then the donut hole for this one lines up with this axis of the aircraft. So if you overlay the one donut on top of the other donut, you get a full 360 degree sphere coverage going all the way around every axis of the airplane. So you don't have any dead spots. So that's a really important thing. So if you have 2 antennas on your aircraft and they're not lined up so they're 90 degrees separated from each other, you have a hole in your antenna pattern, and there's a very real chance that you might get at the wrong orientation and you might lose control of your bird. So heads up, just be aware of that. All right, so see, I keep doing that. I keep dropping into tech topics, but I hope somebody out there appreciates it. Okay, so I hope you guys like the little definition of beam diversity and all the other good stuff. But back to the topic at hand about my first flight. So just to make sure that everything balanced out and that I had all the weight over in the right direction in order to make sure that the plane balanced out okay, I went ahead and mocked up my FPV camera system. So just to make sure that, you know, everything fit for the most part and that the plane could balance properly. What I didn't realize is that this basically weighs almost nothing, which is cool. That's a good thing. So what are we looking at? So this right here, and I'm going to do an actual unboxing because I have two of these guys. So one is still nice and pristine in this box. But this is actually a Caddx Turtle V2 FPV camera. And what's really awesome about this guy is that it has standard def video that it sends down to the ground, but then it also has this extra little board back here in the back where it records full 1080p high def 60 frame per second video. And you've got this other little nub, this little module here that you can use to interact with the on-screen display system so that you can program this guy. So this is really kind of sweet. I picked this up for about 60 bucks online off Amazon. So that's going to give me really nice, high quality, high def video to edit for the channel, but then also be able to give me FPV first person view video back down to the ground. So I'm rigging up a ground station that's going to have a, I think it's either 5 or 7 inch LCD display. So I'll be able to display the video in real time and look at it, or so people on the ground can see what's coming through it. I haven't decided if I'm going to try to fly with FPV goggles, but that's a decision for later, and that's another video for another day. So this guy right here is actually my 40 channel transmitter. So this guy, as I mentioned before, has a spot where it's reserved for mounting in the back of the aircraft here. So for my first flight, the VTX video transmitter was back in here. These guys were mocked up inside the payload bay of the aircraft, and everything was lined up and everything balanced, and it flew really well. And you even saw I had my little video transmitter antenna mounted up there as well. So it was pretty much in full first flight configuration, which was a good analog to how I plan to fly this thing in at least in the near term future. And you can also see that underneath here, just because I want to have flexibility in where I do the final mounting on these, I also rigged up this nice little extension cable so I can go from the transmitter here to the transmitting antenna, just everything line up. Now, as you see, I haven't wired everything up yet, and the reason is the video transmitter and the Turtle here, they come with different types of connectors, so I'm actually going to have to make some adapter cables so I can hook everything together. So I'm going to have to rig up a little jumper cable to get me full battery voltage to the Turtle, which has the ability to read that voltage and to put that on the on-screen display. So I can have voltage information coming down on the video, as well as voltage information coming down through my telemetry, which is what this set of wires here as well. So I'm going to be swimming in voltage data. But like I said, the video transmitter has one set of connectors that it uses, and this has another set of connectors which are different than the connectors that are in the airplane. So I'm just going to have to do a little bit of wiring and rig up the right adapter cable so that everything can plug in and have everything in the spot that I want it. So that's phase one. So after I get that set up and get a little bit comfortable and familiar with it, and I basically build up my proficiency flying that way, then I'm going to move on to phase two. Oh, and there's one other little thing that I'm doing to the aircraft. You see over here on this side, I got this stuff. This is actually called laminating film. And there's a bunch of videos out there talking about using this. Back in the old days where people would build RC airplanes out of balsa, you basically just have a balsa wood rib structure, and then you would take plastic film, cover the aircraft with it, and then use a special hot iron to make that film shrink, and that would basically make a really, really strong structure for your airplane. So a lot of the foam plane guys have figured out that if you just take this laminating film and you use that to cover the foam, it, number one, does a really good job of protecting all your stickers and all your graphics and all your paint jobs and stuff like that. But number two, it makes the plane strong. like really, really strong. So it's like additional armor plating your aircraft. So you're taking something that's already pretty durable to begin with and just taking it to the next level. So I like overkill. So I figured that I'd go ahead and I would do this plane and the Ranger electric glider both with armor plating of laminating film, and that's just going to provide me an extra layer of protection and just make the planes a little bit more durable for the paint jobs. Because I mean, even though I'm keeping this fairly stock, I just have, you know, some sponsor stickers that are going on here and my own art house sticker. But for the Ranger, that's got a full custom paint job that honestly, the paint that I use is a little bit more brittle than I thought it would be. So I'm going to take extra steps to try to protect that paint job, just to, you know, just to keep that plane looking prettier longer. All right, so this has been long enough. Stay tuned. The next video that you see is actually going to be my first flight footage, and I'm also probably going to take the plane out and fly a little bit more tomorrow. So if I'm able to get out, I'll splice that additional video at the end. The very first flights were strictly hover tests, so I didn't transition to aircraft mode. So I'd like to get out and try to transition to aircraft mode, just so you guys can see that during the first flight video, even though it's technically not from my first flight. But we'll see if I can make that happen. The weather here has just been nutty. So it's supposed to be clear tomorrow, but it's going to be frigid. So that may or may not happen. So either way, I'm going to post that first flight footage and the first wrecks, because I made some really stupid mistakes just because I was eager to get out and try to fly the bird. But there's a learning opportunity there. So I want to share that footage so you guys can laugh at me and basically learn from my mistakes, so you don't do the same dumb things I did during your first flights. All right, guys, our House 21 signing out. Remember the mantra: fly, fix, fly, break it, fix it, and do it all over again. And like I said, stay tuned. You're going to see a lot of this bird and a lot of the Ranger 1600 and a lot of my cars, because after I get done with this round of aircraft videos, I'm going to get back into finishing the Arma refurb for the Arma Typhoon I picked up, getting that Team Associated RC18 NT 18 scale together, and just doing a bunch of other stuff. So lots of new content coming. Stay tuned. I hope you guys like it. I'm enjoying it. So, hey. Yeah, but I've been getting a lot of great comments about the series, so thanks a lot for you guys watching. Like I said, stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of cool, interesting stuff coming up. Plus, I even have some even more new builds to debut to you as well. So, and like I said, this is only phase 1 for this aircraft. There's a lot more coming. Our House 21 signing out. Peace.